Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod. Use the
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod and another great episode we got for this week. We got our co-host Kirk with us in the Escape Pod this week, and we are talking about the audiobook called Dooku Jedi Lost. This is the tragic downfall of the great Jedi Master who, in the films portrayed by Christopher Lee, never really got a whole lot of screen time, but lots of screen time through Clone Wars and, of course, this book and some other stories here and there, including that of the events of that prequel animated show, Tales of the Jedi. So we're going to focus in on Dooku Jedi Lost this week, and then down the road, we also got a What Happened episode, which will do all the full story of Dooku chronologically, you know, beginning to end, but in a more glossed over fashion. But there is so much information in this audiobook that we got for review. So let's chat about this and dive right in.
Another happy landing.
All right, welcome back, Kirk. Hold on a second here. Hold on.
Very just good to be back.
There we go. Yeah, it's good to have you back. And what is new?
I've been traveling the galaxy. It's been a wonderful time. I've seen many stars, seen lots of planets. Things have been good, you know?
Yeah.
Just chilling, just cruising. Looking forward to the next Star Wars show to come out, which I don't think will be for quite some time.
Right. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be seeing anything until, what is it called? The Mandalorian and Grogu?
Skeleton Crew, maybe? Is that coming out first?
Well, we got Skeleton
Maybe
Crew.
that.
Yeah, that's the next Disney Plus show. And then, but I mean, I was thinking about it. I was like, we're not going to be seeing a Star Wars movie in the big screen for a couple of years now. I guess, like 2026 or something like that. Yeah. So
I'm going to have to, I completely just lost my train of thought there, but I'll have to go back and rewatch some other shows and things. Actually, you know what? I haven't even finished The Bad Batch yet, season 3. I still am stuck on episode 10 or something. I got 3 episodes to go.
Really? Dang.
Yeah, I know. I was there for every single episode that we did, but I obviously lost the plot and didn't finish the last 3.
Oh man, that's too bad because you know, it ended up being such a decent show towards the end. No, I mean it was good. I mean it was good. It wasn't like it certainly had its moments though, which rattled me up, like the Pabu episode, but you know, it ended up having a pretty nice completion there towards the end, and so you know, lots of good stuff there, but. This week we've got focus in on Count Dooku as a character, which is pretty sweet. But before we do that, you know, I did have to bring on the music here. Let's see. I have to read something off here because of course we had a very unfortunate loss, you know, this past week with James Earl Jones in the 1980s. The Empire Strikes Back, you know, A New Hope, and Return of the Jedi, all 3 original films. James Earl Jones spoke one of the most iconic lines in motion picture history. "No, I am your father." The actor recalled that when I first, well, it says it's actually, "No, Luke, I am your father." He's like, "No, I'm your father," or "No, Luke, I am your father." I don't know. I can't remember.
Wait, which one is it? Oh, no, which one is it?
Yeah, I know, right? It's always confusing.
The most iconic line in history, and
right.
I still can't remember the line.
I know, it trips everyone up.
I think it's "No, I am your father."
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is "No, I'm your father." The actor recalled that when he first saw the dialogue, he said, "Luke, I am your father." And he said to himself, he's lying. I wonder how they're going to play that lie out. And the one simple line of dialogue helped define the narrative arc for the Star Wars saga for the next 25 years. As James Earl Jones himself would explain, Darth Vader doesn't think he's evil, and the suggestion that he has not always been evil. So the story becomes, how does one become evil, and how is he redeemed from that? James Earl Jones was able to bring that full arc to completion in 2005 with the return of Darth Vader in Revenge of the Sith. Once again, with the characteristic humility, he paid tribute to actor Hayden Christensen, who after portraying Anakin Skywalker would also don Vader's costume. I see great potential toward all of Darth Vader choices in that young man, he said, while the film was still in production. Darth Vader remained a very important part of James Earl Jones' career for another 2 decades as he reprised the character in everything from television series, Star Wars Rebels, Obi-Wan Kenobi, to the theme park attractions, Star Tours, and more like Rogue One and The Rise of Skywalker. And of course, how could we forget his very iconic lines from that of The Lion King and The Lion King live action. And this year marks 30 years of The Lion King, as well as the launch of the Lion King live action prequel movie called Mufasa. And pretty crazy how that happens, you know? And I remember when Carrie Fisher was lost, it was the same year that she made her CG debut in Rogue One, and that was a really surreal timing. You know what I mean? And I don't know, like, what are your fond memories hearing James Earl Jones in a movie?
Well, actually, strangely enough, yesterday I was just organizing all my camera gear and getting ready for shoots and work and everything, and I just happened to put on, by complete, like, wasn't even thinking, but I put on the Star Wars documentary Empire of Dreams, and it got to the James Earl Jones part where I think Harrison Ford was talking about how they apparently pulled Mark Hamill aside to tell Mark Hamill that what the actual line was in the movie, because on set they said Obi-Wan killed your father, as it's quite commonly known now. And just hearing James Earl Jones' reaction to reading that line, because obviously he read it in post afterwards. And I'm not going to do an impression or anything at all, but he essentially said, he's like, I know that Vader's lying. Like, he's not Luke's dad. There's no way. And he was dedicated. He was so passionate about it. And that, in combination with listening to David Prowse's voice, I think he was the main stuntman for Darth Vader in New Hope. Is that right?
David Prowse was the physical actor beneath the costume.
Yeah, so obviously he was like that. He's had a Scottish accent, and everyone on set of A New Hope, again listening to his documentary, was like that's it. That's what Darth Vader's gonna sound like. It's just some Scottish guy. I think was one of like the direct quotes. And then like I think like James Earl Jones is like presence like completely transformed the character, and he's not even visually on screen, so it's just the power of his voice, and as well as all the other characters that he plays. I think another big fond memory I have of him, and this is not necessarily Star Wars related, but when I was a kid I used to watch The Big Bang Theory a lot, and he had this feature, or this special feature in one of the Big Bang Theory episodes where he meets Sheldon, and they go on this amazing like night out together. And like halfway night out they go and knock on Carrie Fisher's door, and they ding dong her, whatever you want to call it. And it was so funny. I'd like to think that's what James Earl Jones was like as a friend. He's just like a kid in an adult's body, I guess. So it's so sad to hear he passed away, but yeah, I mean, life comes full circle, and he had an incredible career, and he's definitely his voice and his performances have definitely contributed to a lot of pop culture iconic renditions and remixes and everything over the years. So I think it's going to be a long time until his name is last said by people around the world, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know he's going to be well missed, and lots of technology these days being able to recreate voices, and more recently with the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, I know the software called Respeech was used as it's credited in the show, to recreate his younger days as being Darth Vader. So, with enough reference material to go off of, I mean, perhaps he will sort of live on in that world and continue to play the voice of Darth Vader as time goes by, which I like to think is a very real possibility. So yeah. So go and see Mufasa. I'll be first in line to see Mufasa. When it comes out later this year, I'm super excited about that movie.
Is he playing the voice
know.
for Mufasa, or is it Reese speech? I assume it's probably Reese speech or something.
I have no clue because it's like pretty much done. So I would imagine if he did do any Easter egg lines, he probably did do them, within the last 2 years or so. So it might actually be his cherry on top finale performance, if he does make a surprise appearance in that film. But I guess we'll have to wait and find out.
My favorite performance by him is actually a bit of a different one compared to the original trilogy and all that. I loved Vader's lines and his delivery in Rogue One. Like, it's the older James Earl Jones as well, so you could tell a little bit, but I just think he was excellent in Rogue One. It was so great. Yeah, it was good. I think was it when he was talking to like Orson director Krennic? Yeah, be careful not to choke on your aspirations, director. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a Darth Vader quote I want to use from now on.
So good. All right, well, we got one more piece of happy news. Is a big congratulations to Ewan McGregor for his Hollywood Walk of Fame star, which was placed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame today. And his good friend Hayden Christensen actually spoke at his ceremony. So that was really cool. Did you catch any of that?
No, I didn't. I think I saw photos of it, but I haven't seen any footage of that. But that's awesome.
Yeah. So his whole family was there, and Hayden spoke as a guest, and it was really special to watch. So that was really cool. I thought we would just, take a quick listen at, maybe a section of that, if you want to hear it. Let me just pull it up here. Okay, here it is.
So please help me welcome to the stage the last guest speaker, Hayden Christensen.
All right, take it away.
All right.
Get it back. Okay. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Wow. Quite the turnout for you, my friend. It's really an honor for me to get to be here and say a few words about my friend, Ewan McGregor. Now I'm going to talk about you like you're not just standing right next to me, but... Ewan McGregor is one of our great actors, and in my opinion, the coolest person on the planet. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for Ewan's work, right from the early days of his career. I remember watching Trainspotting for the first time and just being completely blown away by your work, man. He just leaps off the screen, his fearlessness and his mastery of craft were undeniable. And I remember thinking to myself that this was the type of work that I wanted to be able to do as an actor. Since then, his career has been storied, his body of work prolific, a part of so many great films, playing so many great characters. And it's why he continues to be regarded as one of our most admired and respected actors. Yeah.
All right, so that's just a small clip of a bigger speech, and he had some really touching words at the end there as well, which was quite special to hear. But I just kind of skipped to the end because Hayden's the last speaker, and then Ewan speaks after that. But definitely worth listening to in full. If you have the time, it was pretty cool. I don't watch a lot of those online, but of course it's Obi-Wan Kenobi, so got to do it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad he he received the star. Not that some Hollywood awards are like there's so many of them these days, but like it's just good that he's acknowledged for another piece. And I love he's done so many roles, but Hayden Christensen was there to be the final person to talk.
Yeah.
You know what? I hope maybe in like 20 years time, like when Ewan's like 70 and Hayden's like 60 or something like that, they do like a what if Star Wars and like what if, you know, Anakin never fell to the dark side and these guys were just two Jedi buddies or something that had lived and became old together, I guess.
Yeah, that would be cool. It's amazing because there's so many comments under that video of people saying like, well, this is the kind of friendship I want in my life and all this stuff. And these guys have known each other for well over 20 years now, and they've been such good friends ever since they've been working together. And I think to myself, like, man, like what an iconic film duo, you know, playing master and apprentice and playing some of the most iconic cinematic scenes in history, and going on to, you know, reprise those same roles later in the Disney era of Star Wars, and also to still be such good friends, right? Like, I know that, you know, Daniel Radcliffe and Emma and Rupert Grint have all sort of, you know, gone their own way in life, and I don't know, I'm sure they're still in touch and stuff, but you never see them together, right? Like you never see them at any kind of event together or speaking, you know, in public about each other really as much anymore than when those Harry Potter films are being done. So, it is really cool to see, them kind of do this and have one of them talk about the other in that special way. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
And I just totally realized that Ewan McGregor's married to...
Yeah, Hera, the actress that plays Hera.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Mary Elizabeth.
Is that allowed? Is that canon? Is that legal?
I mean, technically, they're definitely not the same age, so probably not. But because I think Hera was like a kid during the Clone Wars, right?
Is that legal?
Is that legal?
Oh, good. Okay, that long pause there. I thought you just what you just heard when I said like, okay, this is weird guy.
Trying to reach the
impression. Yeah,
trying to reach the bottom.
I'm glad you. Yeah, I'm glad you got the reference. Otherwise, that would have been another awkward one.
Oh man. That's his wife, and there's a bit of an age difference there in real life as well, because his eldest daughter is 28 years old, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead, I think, is 39 or something like that. So, you know, I don't know how awkward that is, but
age matters not unless they're under 21.
Yeah.
Make sure you. Anyway, moving on.
You know, no matter how it's said, like done in Yoda's voice, it just sounds kind of awkward.
Man, I know we're gonna roll into the Dooku stuff, but this Dooku, the book is just like, it's just 6 hours of Yoda being slightly disappointed with the people around him.
Yeah, I know. Oh, geez. I got one more short thing and then we can dive right into this book. But headline that popped up on my newsfeed is Lucasfilm was recently, unfortunately, and maybe this is Disney, but I don't know, was sued for recreating Grand Moff Tarkin actor Peter Cushing from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. So did you see that by any chance, that news article?
I did see that.
Yeah,
I did see that. I don't get it at all, because like they gave him, like, the family should have like stuff over this, and it's Peter. He's playing a character in the end, and the family gave permission. So I'm not a legal expert, so who knows what's going on there.
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because there's claims that they gave him they got his permission to do it, and then the family was compensated. You know, the something around $37,000 or something for the likeness to be reused in a new movie, even though they claim that it wasn't necessary because, you know, it's a 1977 reportrayal that they're doing. Apparently that's covered under original agreements from that first movie, but yeah, compensation was given, and now there's a big court case. I found the timing just really odd. Like, you know, this is beyond almost, we're hitting like 8 years from when that movie came out, which means that it was probably 10 years ago today that they started planning for the portrayal of that character again, you know, because the entire duration of Rogue One was also the entire duration of an entire team within ILM that was working on this, you know, digi-double for Grand Moff Tarkin that whole time. So it's pretty nuts how far things have come now with deep fake and AI and bringing back things like young Mark Hamill and Book of Boba Fett and all that. But that this was one of the first like really stellar close up hero things that they'd ever done in a film like that. And only dating before that you got like things that look much worse, but I think they nailed it. It was such a great job, and it's just crazy that 10 years later, almost, it's been now all of a sudden it's coming up again as like a problem. So pretty crazy.
Well, I think someone smells profit, and that's why they're doing it.
Yeah, some Hondo out there. Yeah,
I smell profit. Oh, that's right. For some reason, I was thinking it was in my head, I was going to do the impression of Anakin's master when he was a slave. I can't remember what's his name again.
Oh yeah, Watto.
It's already
yeah,
Watto. Yeah, I was going to do the Watto impression, but yeah, no, you're right. It was Hondo.
Yeah, or Watto would say,
"No money, no parts, no deal."
Have you seen that like Lego Star Wars cutscene where Watto in the background, like Qui-Gon is talking to Anakin, saying, "You can become a Jedi, come to the Jedi Temple," and Watto in the background's going, "Get your red flags! I've got red flags here. Red flags for children about to go to the Jedi Council," or something like that.
No, I've never seen that.
It's like I think it's a cutscene in like one of the later Lego like games, or maybe it's like a short film or something, and essentially like Qui-Gon's convincing Anakin to come with him, and Watto's like waving red flags in the background because like it's a red flag and you shouldn't go to the Jedi Order because of what things are going to happen, I guess.
Oh, that's kind of funny. Yeah.
Anyway, go search it up. I'm sure someone will find it.
Yeah. So someone will post it in the comments, hopefully. But so here we are. Let's dive into this Count Dooku here, shall we? Just a moment. Let's hit that speeder. All right, so we got a video here, and I'll play the audio for us, but go and check out the full YouTube channel from the handle SWFT_edits. SWFT. They've got lots of awesome Star Wars highlight reels and things that aren't Star Wars. They got stuff from House of Dragon and so many other things, but. They had whoever is behind that channel did a video a few minutes long of the story of Count Dooku, and just based on a lot of the audio clips here, you can kind of get an idea for just kind of what happens throughout his appearances in Tales of the Jedi and Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and the Clone Wars, and so on and so forth. So it's almost 5 minutes here, but I thought we'd just listen to the audio so we can kind of get into that mindset of who this character is, what he's been through, where he ends up, and where he sort of started. I think you've got the link over there on your end as well, Kirk. So feel free to just deafen the Discord for a little bit, just if you want to watch it on your end as well. But I'm gonna play this audio, and and then we'll get right in right after that. All right, let's take a listen.
He has a very powerful face, doesn't he? He was one of the most brilliant Jedi I've had the privilege of knowing.
I never understood why he quit.
Well, one might say he was always a bit out of step with the decisions of the Council.
You hold them accountable.
I've been warning them about the coming darkness for years. Do you think the Jedi will truly keep peace?
The dark side of the Force has clouded their vision.
Never to be taken seriously if they continue to take everything the Senate says as law.
In the end, I think he left because he lost faith in the Republic.
You serve the Senate.
No. There is no interest in the common good.
A quality valued less and less in these great halls.
We serve the people of this republic. Remember what you told me.
The Republic cannot be fixed.
The Jedi blindly serve a corrupt Senate that fails the Republic it represents.
It is time to start over. What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
I want only to bring peace and order to the galaxy.
I don't condone your method.
I will have the truth. But you had every right to protect your planet. Make sure your people don't lose heart and evolve. It is the only way you will truly have victory. I say that for all of us.
Rise, my friend.
Master.
Join the dark side. Dooku has.
Your anger is your strength.
Corruption like yours must be eradicated.
We will bring the Republic to its pitiful knees.
Distrust are his ways now.
Sith control everything. You just don't know it. We shall rule the galaxy together. I will be even more powerful than Lord Sidious. I used to bring Qui-Gon here as a boy.
I wish he were still alive. I could use his help right now.
Sifo-Dias.
He would have been proud of the army we've built for him.
You think Dooku funded his war effort by only stealing from outside worlds?
Camino.
He took from us.
The clones.
Execute Order 66.
And the nation Jedi,
his own people,
will be hunted down and defeated.
I have betrayed everyone and everything I know.
No. You have been loyal to a greater cause, all in service of our greater goals.
How many have died because of my actions? I wonder if any meaningful change will come of this.
You were right about so many things. Qui-Gon did not have to die.
Such is the price of freedom.
Help me now. There is still a chance to make things right.
I'm afraid.
I know you are.
I'm afraid it is too late.
You want to prove your loyalty? Kill her. Kill him. Kill him now.
Soon I will have a new apprentice.
I have done everything you asked.
One far younger and powerful.
And I will ask more of you.
His death was a necessary loss.
If we are to succeed.
All right. Well, let's dive into this character, shall we?
Oh, yes, we shall.
Yeah, what a great, little video there. Just, fantastic editing on parts of the editor. Yeah, I thought it was really well done and captures a lot of the good moments to give an idea of this character, where this character's been, the mindset that he has. And I don't know, just after watching or hearing that, did you connect that with sort of how this character has been portrayed in the audiobook as well?
Yeah, there's a lot overlapping there. Like you got to learn so much more about Sifo-Dias and the other characters that were in his life and everything. I think out of all the Tales of the Jedi series that we've gotten so far, the Dooku one was by far the most riveting, and I even feel like there could be a longer narrative with Dooku in the end, even if it's retelling a lot of the stuff that was mentioned and disclosed in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I hate to say it, it's almost a shame that so much of this story has been told in other forms of media, because he is the kind of character that having sort of a younger portrayal of done in a cinematic point of view, as a movie would have been amazing. It would have been fantastic to watch, because Christopher Lee, he was such a great actor, and he's brought to life so many great appearances, but the character never really had a whole lot of depth when you watch the movie. He's just this old bad guy that shows up, who's, you know, a good swordsman and talented with the Force, and you know, when he shows up again, you know, it's at the very end of episode 2, and then beginning of episode 3, he's capped off, and, you know, the story moves on. And it's really a shame that his live action was never really that lengthy, and we got a lot more of him in the Clone Wars. And at least for me, the definitive version of that character sort of lives rent free as this animated guy because of just the I guess this other you know, iconic definitive sort of portrayal by from the Clone Wars. You know, we had these really dark scenes with that character, as well as his amazing scenes in Tales of the Jedi, like you said. I mean, you know, the arc that portrayed sort of that final downfall, as well as some moments leading up to it, was very compelling to watch as far as the story goes. And I think this character has a lot of depth, right? And I think one of the things that gets overlooked very frequently is that this is a Jedi who is a prodigy in his younger years. You know, this is a Jedi who had the respect of many, many people, including politicians, and was one of the very few apprentices that Master Yoda, Grand Master Yoda, ever took on personally. So there's a lot of weight there with the idea that this is a Jedi Master who, you know, was once in that regard and becomes a Sith Lord. You know, the focus in the prequels is very much on Anakin Skywalker, but it's almost unfortunate that we didn't get enough time with Dooku. So to get an audiobook like this to really flesh out some of that story, some of the pieces that are missing perhaps from the Tales of the Jedi story are sort of made complete when you add this audiobook into the mix. That was just my thought. What were your initial thoughts, having now kind of consumed this story, this chapter?
Oh, right, you left nothing for me. That's perfectly said. Podcast over.
Podcast over.
That's it. Thanks, guys. Good to have you. And come down to Dexter's Donuts and have donuts and other Dexter things with me. You know what? I 100% with everything that you said. One of the biggest things I loved about the this particular story about a Jedi falling to the dark side is that obviously with Anakin we saw him fall as he wanted to be able to have the power to save Padme, amongst all his other reasons as well, including being frustrated with the Council. I think this story really kind of delved into how someone was corrupted by the dark side or became delusional towards away from the Jedi, not for a romantic like love interest reason. Obviously he had his family and those attachment things, but he didn't necessarily have a love interest that caused him to move over. But yeah, the compassion and his empathy for his family and staying in contact with them, particularly his sister, was like a big reason for that. But yeah, more importantly as well is that it's quite fascinating to see how someone even like, you know, Grand Master Yoda was able to have a Padawan that was unsuccessful. And it almost to me gave me more of a understanding that, yeah, these Jedi were, including Yoda, were completely in over their heads with the power that they had and what they wanted to action and what they didn't. And not necessarily because they were evil or anything like that, just because they were just so used to this system working for the last thousands of years. And one of the biggest examples of that was the natural disaster or the apocalyptic disaster on that planet that Sifo-Dias that he foresaw. I'm going a bit too into the story, I guess. Now we'll jump into a bit afterwards. But yeah, I thought it was great at, again, showing another perspective to why the Jedi and hence the Council weren't having the best interests of what a lot of these Jedi like Dooku thought on the galaxy. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Everything else you said like summed it up perfectly as well, man.
All right. Well, let's dive right in here. So the audiobook was released April 30th, 2019 by Kevin Scott. It is part of the Star Wars canon. The script version of the audiobook was released October 1st, 2019, a couple months later. This is one of the few audiobook, sort of first audiobook designed stories that they've done in partnership with Audible. So there's been a few over the years. I think Dooku Jedi Lost was perhaps the first one. There's been a few, one of them being, or two of them being High Republic stories. They did one called Tempest Runner, which was in Phase 1 of the High Republic. And there was another one in Phase 2 of the High Republic called The Battle of Jeddah. And there was one which adapted the first volume of the Dr. Aphra comics, which was titled, as appropriately, which was Dr. Aphra. So that's 4 that I can think of. And I don't know how many others they've done, but this one, compared to some of the other ones, was similar, at least to me, as the Tempest Runner audiobook. And I did listen to the Dr. Aphra one as well as read the comics, and I can't quite remember that one as well. But the one downside to this audiobook is it wasn't very linear. It jumped back and forth a lot. So you had to very closely pay attention to who was talking, whose voice it was, and just kind of what was happening in the cinematic sort of presence of things. I mean, it was almost edited in a way that would have been a very good editing choice for a movie that constantly flashes back all the time. And it was a bit of a shorter audio adventure, be it clocking in a maybe 6 or 7 hours or something. But, if you speed it up to like 1.2, 1.3, still sounds pretty natural, and you can get it through in, like 1 or 2 hours less than that. So, I'd say overall, this book, timeline wise, to where we're kind of diving in here, is both past and present. Present being right before, I would imagine it's before Attack of the Clones. So it's probably sort of in that time period of where Dooku has now left the Order. He is now kind of gaining ground as a Sith Lord, and his new apprentice, Asajj Ventress, is attempting one of the, I guess, a mission for Dooku, and nobody knows about Ventress yet at this point. So this is definitely before the Clone Wars. It's very secretive. It also dives into a bit of her past. So this audiobook is also kind of relevant to her story as well. Although we're going to be focusing more on the Dooku end of things for this podcast. The flashbacks, which is the majority of the book, takes place kind of starting as him as a Jedi initiate, which is basically a youngling, but maybe a bit older than a youngling. Maybe like the age of 12 or something like that, and then kind of going up through the years, and progressively gets, as you kind of see him throughout all his stages of life, up until the point where he does make the decision to leave the Order officially. And we're going to also try and fit that into how it fits into the animated show. But yeah, I've got it all. I kind of took bullet point notes as I was listening through the whole thing. So what I can do is just kind of read a few notes at a time, and when something important comes up, we can kind of linger on that for a bit. And I feel like that should be a good way for everyone listening to at least get an idea for kind of how the story went. And that way, if you don't plan on listening to it yourself, you don't need to, but major spoilers ahead. So there's a spoiler bell. You've been warned. This is a full, disclosing spoiler-centric episode of the audiobook Dooku Jedi Lost. Okay, so
man, I can't wait just to talk about how Dooku killed Obi-Wan. That was unbelievable.
I know, right? Who knew?
Thank God you put that spoiler thing up. It would have been a shame if someone didn't hear
yeah, you were just
point.
waiting for that. You were just waiting for that. so we got our first note here. So the book starts off with, I think it was with Ventress and Dooku. Ventress throughout the story hears her dead Jedi Master Kai Narek in her head a lot of the time. But there was a verbal confirmation. Ventress confirms to us that she did, in fact, fight in the Rat Attack arenas, which is where Dooku found her. And it turns out that he sought her out with the aid of the Force. And later on in the book, you find out how and why he did that. But it starts off by kind of giving us the idea that not only did the encounter between him and her happen on Rat Attack like it did in the old 2D Clone Wars show, but that's something that a lot of people really wanted to be recanonized canonized, and it turns out that is in fact how it happened. So she was a kind of like a gladiator, you know, after her Jedi apprentice days failed behind her and everything like that. Yeah, she was a fighter in the gladiator arenas on the Rat Attack, and that's where Dooku finds her. So I thought that was really cool. Have you seen the old 2D Genndy animated Clone Wars series?
No, I still haven't. It's on the list, but no, that's the one with like the really like extra animated features on people's faces, right? Like,
yeah,
like Mace Windu's chin is like huge and everything, and Obi-Wan Kenobi's beard is like massive.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. So,
nice. No, I unfortunately have not. I haven't seen that yet. No.
Okay, so a small tidbit out there for anyone who has. Then was cool to get that confirmation. Then we flash back, and I'm going through these bullet points again. These are bullet points, so it's just maybe some of the important details. So as a boy, Dooku is sent with a few other young Jedi initiates to a galactic fair hosted on Serenno, which is Dooku's homeworld, if you didn't know. Sifo-Dias is with him, who is his own age and a friend. And Master Yoda, Tera Sinube, and a few others are there as well. Dooku's father, mother, sister, and brother are introduced to the story. And the names are, so his parents are Anya and Gora, Gora being the dad. Siblings are Ramil, his brother, and Jenza, his sister. So the kids go with the family's protocol droid to inspect the Jedi's lightsaber ceremony showcase event at this galactic fair. Dooku spots Jenza in the crowd, and he doesn't realize yet that it's his sister, but he has a strong feeling towards her in not a romantic way, and chases after her when he sees her and her brother leave the crowd. He catches up to Jenza and Rabil, who are now being robbed of a family heirloom crystal that protects her and him from the thugs. Jenza proceeds to give Dooku a tour and explains some history of the planet and her family in power. On the tour, Dooku spots a dragon sculpture of the Tirataka dragon. It's like a big, ancient, kind of beastly monster that's native to Serenno, which is thought to be long gone, kind of like the Mythosaur. It's bad luck to touch it, and yet he touches it, and an earthquake occurs. He is saved by Jenza, who pushes him out of the way of falling debris, and Yoda comes to save them from the debris, which they end up getting stuck in. An argument breaks out between Yoda and Count Gora, which leads Dooku to, I guess, discover that he is actually the son of Gora and the son of the Serenno family. Yoda tells Dooku the truth of his, I guess, his finding, and he then relays that to Sifo-Dias. Dooku's father called the Jedi and left him on the street curb, basically, for him to pick him up and take him away. And he's very upset about this. You know, he could have been so much more if he was not cast out. And he receives a parcel from Serenno after the whole ordeal is over. They're back at the Jedi Temple. And he finds a holocom inside. And it's from his sister with means to stay in touch. So that's kind of the setup of the whole story. And I don't know, just like initially off the top of your head, like what did you like about the beginning of this book?
I'm usually not the person that says I love to, watch and see cameos on screen because I like a good story first. But yeah, coming across with all these characters that we're very, very familiar with, both Asajj and you have Yoda, but also like learning more about Sifo-Dias and how much of an absolute troublesome kid he is, and not necessarily troublesome, but he's just so like he's not ready to be on his own. I wouldn't leave him on his own for a little bit. He seems like he's always getting into trouble, or like he's not very all with it. I really liked how the story started, especially just getting the early kind of looks at what Dooku was like as a kid, and you could like very clearly tell that from a young age he was being, I guess, not necessarily manipulated, but the fact that he was still in contact with his family, knew of his family, was a pretty big deal. Although it was brutal, those scenes between him and his father. I didn't quite catch why exactly his father hated him so much. I got a general feeling why, but like that stuff was brutal. So it made all the rest of the story be like, okay, I understand why this guy wanted to fall to the dark side in the end, I guess.
Yeah, basically his father's just a wicked man. Like his father's just a total, wicked guy. And I think that kind of rubs off on his other son later in life. But yeah, he just thought his son Dooku was a freak, and all I could think about was, hey, this is a little bit like Lily Potter and her, her family, I guess, or her sister, just thinking she's a total freak, right? Like they all thought he was a freak, so they gave him up to the Jedi Temple, and that was something he unfortunately discovers. And it's interesting the way that they kind of make it seem like it's sort of in his blood to know that he was meant for greater things, and he's got this like giant ego about him, and this charismatic behavior, and I don't know. There's all these things about Dooku that you can tell he kind of comes from a well-off background, if you know what I mean. Like he wears a cape all the time, and he just kind of embraces this royal presence, if you will. So for him to discover like
what I found,
all that is like kind of crazy. That sort of sets the stage for who he becomes, right?
Yeah, no, could mention the cape thing, because I found that all of the initiates it just felt like a high school at some stage. Like they bullied each other. The amount of roasting that people were saying behind Yoda's back and calling Yoda like a weird little goblin and things. So the things that I'm not used to hearing in Star Wars. But yeah, it was just like I guess kids are kids, no matter if they're in the Jedi Order or if they're in they're not all robot sentience in the end.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, let's move on here. So we flash to the...
Oh, but by saying that, I cut myself off there. But saying that, it's like, it was clear that like Dooku was definitely like that odd apple amongst the group of initiates, and hence why he got picked on and looked at. I mean, he's the kid wearing the cape and comes from wealth and all that. He had a bit of class to him versus the other initiates. Anyway, that's where I was going with that. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no worries. So we flash to the present, and Dooku is sending Ventress to locate Jenza, his sister. Asajj Ventress uses a ship of Dooku's, and this ship is called what's it called? The Windrunner. Which, fun fact, the Windrunner it's like a big blimp ship or something in Star Wars, and Ventress uses it to navigate to where she needs to be. But this ship was first introduced in an EU comic called Agent of the Empire, issue number 2, and then showed up in the following issue as well. So that's just kind of like a behind the scenes thing. They were including something from the old EU in this story. So she goes off to find Jenza. This is in the present, and Dooku sends her on the journey to Serenno to look at old holo files while she's on the ship, so that she can kind of know a bit more about Jenza and discover a bit more about her for whatever reason. And truthfully, I don't really know if that was like a relevant part of the story. I don't think it was really within character for Dooku to kind of be open like that to somebody like Ventress, but I think it would have been a little better if maybe she just kind of found something by mistake. But they sort of give you the idea that he intends for her to know him a bit more. So I thought that was an interesting story choice, and I don't know, I was kind of wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Perhaps it was more of a therapeutic thing. He wanted someone to be able to understand him, perhaps.
Yeah, maybe.
But I had to message you halfway during my reading, because I said to you, like, what's going on here? So is Ventress like, is she got Dooku under mind control, or like is she peering into his past, or how is this being told? I did in the end think this was like an extremely weird story choice, mainly because what Ventress was, I guess the very fact that Ventress was watching back and listening to these memories or these audio diaries, and the way that we listened to them as a listener is that they were like perfect retellings of the exact events of what happened. And obviously there wasn't a camera following around Dooku throughout all of his life. So I found it to be a little bit unbelievable, not necessarily in a good way, that Ventress was able to have a perfect retelling of Dooku's life at the convenience of the reader. So yeah, I found that to be a little bit strange. I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be an exact match for what Ventress was literally reading in the book, more so just for us to know what was going on.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know how else I would have played this. I feel like I feel like we could have just had the story play out without these scenes with Ventress listening, and then maybe Ventress could be included, similar to how Qui-Gon came later into the story. It's probably personally how I would have structured it. I think the back and forth between Ventress and going back and forth even between the timeline that Dooku's life progressed, I felt like there's just too many back and forths going on, and I didn't really love the the inner monologue that Ventress was having with her. Whoever was inside of her head.
Right.
Actually, that part was okay. I just didn't like how like they were reviewing this perfect source material of Dooku's life. Like it was like a BBC documentary on what had happened, I guess.
Yeah, I know. I felt like the way I did with those Acolyte episodes where they kind of came out of just sort of out of nowhere, and it was all of a sudden in a different spot in time. And I thought, you know what, like this type of storytelling just doesn't always work the best for Star Wars. And I feel like this story, I would have been very happy to just sit there and listen to it kind of play out chronologically. And then it just almost felt like it was a very, in the grand scheme of things, that whole mission that Ventress is on is very kind of shoehorned in a way where it's very, very short and there's not a lot of important things that happen on it. And it's really only the ending of that mission that kind of is important. But most of it is all just kind of inner monologue with her. And you do get to know her a bit better as a character and kind of how things wrapped up with her old Jedi Master Kai Narek and, her being basically isolated with him on Rat-Attack. But that was pretty much the extent of that. So it really was no benefit to the Dooku storyline as much as I think they were hoping. But so that was just kind of
I think I think like it doesn't work whenever they cut to that and you feel like the story is like slowing down, like, oh, okay, just gotta wait until we get to the Dooku part again. Like I think that's when it's not really working. I feel like there's a lot of movies out there that do the cutting quite well. I feel like with Ventress's scenes, like when you do cut back to something, like there needs to be rising tension in that scene throughout as you intercut with the other scenes as well. But it was just like a pause and then Ventress narrated, especially those first person things or third person things when Ventress, or not third person, but when Ventress is like, I opened the door, I feel the warm air on my skin, I reach out my hand, I grab the thing. Like I felt like there was a lot of that, but she was saying that as an internal monologue for us to hear.
Something was introduced to the canon here. Something called the Bogan Collection was introduced, which is a hidden vault within the Jedi Temple where they store all of the dark side artifacts that they find on various missions. And there's sort of specialized Jedi that handle that kind of thing. So that was kind of interesting to kind of get in this story. So we flash back again. Dooku and Sifo-Dias are, I guess about the same age, and they sneak into the Bogan Collection room and they start to explore. They discover many Sith artifacts. Dooku has a daydream vision of the dragon that he saw the statue of on Serenno. Dooku disturbed an artifact in that room and it sort of, I guess, awakened and something happened in there. The Jedi Masters discover that they broke in and they interrogate the students. They inflict consequence, but the dark side plants its seed in Dooku and Sifo-Dias. And it's what they feel in that room. And they are basically just blanketed in this thing. They're saturated in it. Whatever sort of artifact that the Jedi were keeping in there was very hazardous to a young child, because it from then on sort of plays a very large part in how each of them have, felt this dark side before. And I guess to be exposed at such a young age, it plays up in each of them very differently later on. So that was kind of interesting to see. Dooku and Sifo-Dias discover the Tirantaka are Sith war beasts, and the rumor is that one was trapped beneath the planet of Serenno. A Jedi by the name of Lean Kostana is introduced to the story, and she is a Jedi whose job it is to find and study ancient Sith relics in preparation for the eventual Sith return, so she believes. So as she was rising through the ranks of the Jedi Order, the young Dooku found himself drawn to a strange fascination with Kostana's work and her missions. Behind the scenes of this character is, instead of reintroducing the character of Thame Cerulean, who was Dooku's Jedi Master in the Star Wars Legends stories, Cavan Scott, that is the author of this book, created the character of Lean Kostana. While not a practitioner of the dark side of the Force herself, Kostana is intended to serve as a catalyst for Dooku's corruption. So if that kind of helps sort of our listeners get an idea for who this Jedi really is. She lives a bit more in the gray, and she's a bit more of a rule breaker, and she deals with Sith artifacts and a bit of a rebellious character by nature. So that definitely doesn't help. Doesn't help the young Dooku.
No, that was she the Jedi during that scene where Dooku initially thought that she was the Sith, but it was a test in the end.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah, such an odd choice of training.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of weird. So
you know what? Actually, one thing before we go a little bit further, I wanted to add a funny note here. But when we're talking about the Bogan collection, have you ever heard of an Australian Bogan?
Say that again.
Have you ever heard of the term like an Australian Bogan?
No, I haven't.
If you go on Google Images and like literally as it's spelt in the book, if you search Australian and then Bogan, it comes up. It's a type of person, like a very Australian, I guess, roughy kind of person, you could say. And every time they would say the Bogan collection, I would have to laugh a little bit. Anyway, that's for some of our Australian listeners if we have any. But I just found that so funny that they named it that, because in Australian culture it does not represent Jedi artifacts or anything like that.
That's pretty fun. It's like an Aussie slang.
Yeah.
All right. So the great beast, the Tirantaka, that is, continues to be an echo of evil through the book and inside Dooku's head. Yoda and Kostana disagree about the Sith coming back. Yoda doesn't believe that they will return, but Lean Kostana believes that they are coming back. And she seems very borderline paranoid with this. She's wrapped up in the knowledge which comes from old prophecies and old relics. And this whole thing really clearly has an influence over Dooku to some degree. And he also begins to idolize her as a sort of a hero figure to her. He looks up to her, right? So that was also, it's worth noting that this character plays such a big influence, not just Yoda, but this Lean Kostana really has an impact on Dooku. All right, let me think here. Lean Kostana, I thought she was a really good character. I thought she served a really good catalyst role. Did you have any opinions on this character as you were, reading through this?
Which character again? Sorry.
Lean Kostana.
Oh, yeah, you're gonna have to re-jog my memory here a little bit. I don't think I remember too much from her.
Yeah, she's the character that's she's an influential character to Dooku. She's the one that takes them on all the missions and stuff like that. She's the one that deals with the Sith artifacts.
Was she master to Sifo-Dias in the end?
Yes.
Was that her? Or that was Centrula, was it?
Yeah, that was her. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I found what I found quite interesting about her was how openly influential she was to Dooku towards advising him to not tell Yoda certain things, and to not go like almost be somewhat rebellious towards the Jedi Order, but also she's quite still within said order as well. And yeah, she had a very interesting influence on Dooku's mind in terms of leading him down a path that wasn't beneficial for him and his Jedi career, I guess, in the end. But she didn't necessarily have bad intent for him. Obviously, Palpatine and other characters that played throughout Dooku's life did have ill intent for him, which led him to the dark side. But yeah, I feel like she contributed a lot because she openly was agreeing with Dooku and setting a bad example in certain ways, such as saying, no, don't tell Yoda, it'll be the end of me. I won't be able to get my reputation back and all that type of stuff. And again, very surprising and stuff that we just didn't see in the prequels. So yeah, I thought, her character was equally fascinating and acted as a bit of a babysitter for Sifo-Dias. I don't know. How did you feel about Sifo-Dias throughout this book? Because I only heard of him once, obviously, during the prequels in episode 2, but I feel like he's also painted in a bit of a picture that like he's a bit of a useless character, always going to get in trouble, not because he's cheeky, but he's more like incapable. He's just one of those characters you have to always make sure you look at to keep an eye on, type of thing.
I think for this story, at least for me, Sifo-Dias was, for the later part of the book, a bit more of a relevant storyline. For the first part of the book, it really tries to paint this idea, this picture that Dooku and Sifo-Dias are just the closest of friends. He has no other friends. He's got no one else really other than Sifo-Dias. That's kind of his partner in crime, so to speak, at at the Jedi Temple as a kid, as a boy. So for them to have him with that relationship with that guy, just play such a important part of his younger years, it's all part of the same tragedy, the same downfall. And those who've seen the Clone Wars arc that I'm kind of trying to Easter egg here is probably going to know what I'm talking about, and we can talk about that later after we finish this review here, but yeah, it's all part of that big downfall, and ultimately is part of the larger story, which is betrayal, towards how this character ends up going about things. If that makes any sense, like leading half the Republic away from their post and starting a civil war kind of thing, right? So yeah, Yoda and Kastana don't exactly agree about the Sith coming back. Yoda's pretty firm on they're gone forever, and Kastana's very, she's correct in the sense that they are coming back. And at this point in time, this is probably the same time period, which overlaps a lot with, I guess this time period where Darth Plagueis is running around out there on his own. At this point, Darth Plagueis would have probably killed his own master, and he's been on his own for quite some time. Plagueis does find Palpatine, as we talked about in the Darth Plagueis review. He finds Palpatine when he's a student. So I would say because Dooku's actually older than Sidious, at least that's what it seems, in the movies and in real life, the actor is older. I would imagine that at this point in time, this is probably before Plagueis finds Palpatine as an apprentice, right? So this is definitely, the Sith are back. They're gaining ground within the galaxy, and I think it's kind of worth painting that picture at least, as far as timeline wise when this takes place. So Kastana's clearly sensing,
which begs the question, that begs the question, Yoda was wrong with a lot of judgment calls. Throughout this whole story, and why do you think that is?
Well, I think it just all comes down to this idea that the dark side clouds their judgment, and Dooku even says that to Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones. He says the dark side of the Force has clouded their vision, my friend. He tells him flat out everything. He tells him the truth, and it's definitely something that he reflects upon later after he fails to defeat Sidious in battle. In Revenge of the Sith, he says, "Failed I have." Right? He's done. He goes into exile because he has failed the galaxy as the Grand Master of the Jedi Order. He's failed to fight Sidious. He's failed to keep an apprentice within the Jedi Order. Dooku's the guy who started this whole thing, essentially, right? As far as the Jedi are concerned, Dooku's the one responsible for most of the tragedy in the Clone War and a lot of the pain that came out of that. And that was Yoda's direct apprentice that did that, right? And so, he has failed on a number of occasions, including Anakin Skywalker, including the Jedi, and so on and so forth. And in one of the Clone Wars arcs, he even speaks to sort of a Force ghost, which is just it's like the dark side playing tricks on Yoda, but Sifo-Dias shows up in that Clone Wars arc as well, and it's all kind of connected, right? It's all connected to Yoda, but Yoda is really the one that's kind of blinded by the dark side, and it's one thing, I guess, for a Jedi Master who kind of lives in his own self-righteousness to not see quite the whole picture, but Lean Kastana is this person who has opened herself up to the idea that acknowledging the dark side and acknowledging that it's there. And I think it's said at some point in the book, she says that to Dooku. She says, don't embrace the dark side. Don't dive over onto that side of the fence. But I'm just paraphrasing here, but she kind of gives him the advice. It's you need to open your mind to the very reality that this is a world with both light and dark in it, right? And you need to realize that it's there. And that's a lesson that Yoda actually learns later on in the Clone Wars in season 6. Is he, for many, many years, hundreds of years, has never really acknowledged that, he's got his own demons living inside of him. And it's not until he faces those demons and those fears that he is able to learn the path to immortality and, become greater because of that. So I really liked that sort of ideology that this character has, and sort of I guess, one of the few Jedi who thinks that way. And because of that, she's able to know the truth that the Sith have returned to the galaxy and that they are rising in power and that they are scheming from behind the scenes and they are planning something that the High Council just can't see because they're so high up in the clouds there thinking everything's all dandy. So I thought that was a really cool part of the story for sure.
That's so well put as well, because I'll add finally here with Yoda, because one of my favorite parts about one of the least favorite Star Wars movies for a lot of people out there, like The Last Jedi, Yoda's scene in that is one of the reasons I went back to the theaters like 5 or 6 times to watch that movie when it came out.
Yeah.
Because when Yoda talks about, I think he says something like failure, the greatest teacher is failure is when Luke burns when Yoda burns the tree. Page turners there were not, but yeah, I think that delivery there was very indicative of a lot of Yoda's career too. Like, he had a lot of failings. He was the most powerful Jedi out there, but he himself also failed too.
Yeah.
I gotta go rewatch that scene. It's such a good scene. And I think going into this conversation, I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that Yoda is someone that is everyone looks up to, but he's also probably one of the most important Jedi that has failed the most as well. And that's made him how powerful he became, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, let's take a quick listen to that.
Not did you pass on what you have learned? Strength, mastery, but weakness, folly, failure also. Yes, failure most of all. The greatest teacher failure is. We are what they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.
Yeah, very good lines. I've always really liked that. So that's probably the best part of the movie, honestly, is when he shows up.
Yeah, it's so nice.
Yeah. All right, so next bullet point here. A tournament is held at the temple to pair up initiates with Jedi Masters who watch the duels. Dooku is randomly picked to fight his best friend Sifo-Dias. He disarms Sifo-Dias in the duel, but gives him his saber back and allows his friend to finish the fight. Despite that, the Jedi Master who Dooku so admires, which is Lean Kastana, ends up choosing Sifo-Dias instead. It is Yoda, the Grand Master, who chooses Dooku, a rare occasion for a Grand Master to elect an apprentice. Yoda must have picked him due to the great power that he senses in Dooku. And so that was a really important part of the story, and I thought that was really cool to see. And it's worth noting that's how they do it. That's, they get all the Jedi younglings, and once they become initiates and they're kind of preparing to be a Padawan, they have a big tournament, and they always change it up every year as to how it's done. But it usually involves duels, and they have it's kind of like a fun event, like all the Jedi Knights and Masters kind of stand around and watch. And if one of them is looking to take on an apprentice of their own, they do it based on, I guess, the performance of the Padawans and kind of maybe how they connect with what they're looking at. So that was interesting to see, unfold in a story, which we haven't really seen before. So, present. So we flash back to the present. Ventress finds Dooku's journal and some of his years as a Padawan in a locked drawer in his desk on the ship. And then we flash back again. Sifo-Dias suffers from dreams, vivid, haunting dreams about millions of people dying for months. He's been suffering from premonitions ever since he's learned to open his mind due to his master's teaching, Lean Kastana. So radical that it inflicts pain upon him. Dooku witnesses this at some point in the story and tells Master Kastana, and they decide to tell the council. Proto-Branch is the system that Sifo-Dias sees in danger. The council decides that they will take no action, and this upsets Lean quite a bit. She goes behind the council's back to help the planet. Yoda and Dooku also go to that planet, and everything's dandy until all of a sudden a solar storm wreaks havoc upon the planet's surface, and the world begins to burn. His vision becomes real, and Dooku thinks that this will serve as sort of a vindication for the council, who did not want to listen to them. And this is sort of the first big staple of, Dooku's resentment towards the council and not listening to them and, not paying attention to what's going on around them. And that was a very big pillar of this story, the one that continuously repeats as the story goes on. Kostana finds Dooku's hidden comlink to his sister, and he explains himself to her. But she decides not to rat him out, but to, tell him to confront the council about it. So once he admits this to the council and Master Yoda, Master Yoda is most disappointed. They grant him permission to visit his sister one last time for their mother's funeral before telling him to cut himself off for good. Dooku suffers from the same ideology as Anakin Skywalker. He thinks that the Jedi shouldn't cut themselves off from other people and their feelings. And that was also something that was quite notable about the character in this book. And I don't know, like between those two things there, Sifo-Dias' visions and, Dooku's opinions on feelings and resentment towards the council, like, what are your thoughts on that part of the story?
It's just a complete cocktail for Dooku to really, and also as a cocktail for me to be like, these Jedi do not have the best interests at heart, or maybe they do, but I guess from our perspective, we have a more broad look of the galaxy and everything. But yeah, again, like we listened to Plagueis not too long ago, and listening to this as well really makes me want to go and do a bit of a marathon with the prequels again, because there's just so much more of an understanding now to what I guess corrupted. Would you say corrupted the Jedi? I don't think that's the right word, but
yeah, I guess the whole thing that deceived
them to be a little bit more delusional.
Yeah, they it's what really led to their deception and their downfall. Yeah.
Would you say that it was the dark side of the Force that clouded their judgment, which it did in a way, but would you say that influenced it more, or the fact that the Jedi were this is like a millennia or 1,000 years of the Jedi being uninterrupted, and that would do a lot for a civilization. Like imagine what humans are like in a 1,000 years from now, where like we're dictated by what we do on a day-to-day basis, I guess, let alone what happens over 1,000 years. So would you say that time had a more influence on the Jedi, or maybe the dark side just brewing from the shadows?
Yeah, I think with time they lost their way, but the dark side brewing in the shadows, they have kind of turned a blind eye to what's really going on out there. And that's certainly, it all kind of plays into, there's not just one reason for it. It's so many little things that kind of lead to their downfall and the fall of the Republic ultimately. But Dooku is sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to extend and say what doesn't make sense from us as a reader, and it does make perfect sense, but logically wise, like these Jedi were saying no to a lot of things. No, we can't interfere. No, we can't do this. No, we can't do that.
Yeah.
But I felt like there was, as the story went on, there was less and less like logical reasons to why they couldn't interfere. They just, I don't know what the Jedi they're peacekeepers in the end, but like what were they interfering with? And by the time the Clone Wars rolled around, like that was them overcompensating for not interfering as much leading up to it. Maybe there's a connection there to be made.
Yeah. Well, that, and it's pointed out by Dooku at some point in the book that the politicians in the Senate just sort of look at the Jedi as a police force. And, later on when the Clone War rolls around, like they end up being instructed by the Chancellor to serve as generals, right? So like, and that certainly was intentional in the grand scheme of things. Like that was all part of the grand plan, was to turn the people against the Jedi. But it really doesn't help that they're sort of doing that themselves in a little bit of a way, even prior to the Clone War. Like they're starting to be very selective with how they get involved, and they're not really doing what Ahsoka would do, which is just help people in need, right? And I think that's sort of how Dooku looks at it, and he's got his own personal feelings that sort of tie into all that. But really for him to see the council that he serves deny him the helping of the innocent is really really affects him a lot, and for them not to listen to his friend, his best friend, and then for terrible things to happen to so many people because of that, really justifies it in his mind that the council is wrong and that they really shouldn't be listened to at all. And so that sort of starts that downhill momentum of defying the council in many ways.
Yeah, it sure does. And I think I think it would be interesting to see more stories from the Tales of the Jedi. I think that's one of the shows that I'm really keen to hear more of, just because I think what the Acolyte, I guess, tried to do, which I respect them trying to at least give it a go, is showing how the Jedi weren't necessarily the most cunning warriors in the world. Like there was an eventual downfall that led to their demise, but I think it was a little bit too explicit. Well, I mean, for a lot of reasons, it didn't really work. But I'd like to see some more Tales of the Jedi episodes exploring this topic of Tales of the Jedi not necessarily in their prime, but to why they were manipulated slowly from being in power for thousands of years.
Yeah. I think that's what's so great about the prequels in that era, is the story is just so rich, right? Like there's so many different avenues that play into their downfall. It's not just kind of one guy and one thing. It's so many things and so many small things that end up becoming a greater reason why this character leaves the Order, or why that one becomes an Inquisitor, and by, you know, this guy going bad and whatever, right? Like there's so many, it's such a grand epic kind of collapse of so many things. You know, it's not just the Jedi Order, it's the Republic, it's Jedi within the Order that become Inquisitors and follow the Grand Inquisitor into chaos with the Inquisitorius, and, you know, the downfall of Anakin Skywalker, and you know, like the departure of Ahsoka Tano from the Order, and you know, the death of Qui-Gon Jinn, and the return of the Sith. Like there's so many things that kind of play into this epic story, and that's just what I love about this time period so much, is that, you know, so much is going on, just constantly overlapping story after story after story, you know, layer upon layer. It's like an onion. Like, you know, the deeper you go, the more rich it gets, and of course even the Darth Plagueis book kind of plays a narrative in that as well, and it becomes such a very interesting story to kind of unravel.
Just take this pill and see how deep and how far the rabbit hole will go. Actually,
yeah,
that's not Star Wars.
You could take the blue pill and live with just the 3 prequels for the rest of your life, or you could take the red pill and discover all the hundreds of stories beneath those 3 movies.
You know what? If there was that kind of pill, which trilogy are you picking? And you could only keep one or the other. And actually, there's 3 pills ready. There's the prequel pill, there's the original trilogy pill, and there's the Clone Wars TV show pill. Which pill are you taking?
Oh geez. Oh man, I can't answer that. Yeah, I'm obviously
search your feelings. You know it's true.
I gotta say this because I'm such a big prequel fan, and I would probably take that one, but really, like, this story is so great only because it's a hopeful one, right? Like all this like darkness and evil and the collapse upon society essentially as they know it in this time period is only a good story because things get better, and because there's the small folk kind of rise up and fight against the power that man I guess fills the void, and the emperor of the galaxy and the empire, and it's the rebellion, the story that comes after that really makes that dark period of time a good story, right? Like I guess it becomes a hopeful story as terrible as things get during that period of time. So as much as I love those movies, they wouldn't be complete without the other half of the story. And I know which pill you would pick, Kirk. It's the sequel era pill, right?
You got me. That's why I didn't include it in the list.
Oh man.
Specifically, like the pill I would take is just the pill that just plays the final scene of Rise of Skywalker. Just the final scene where Palpatine like shoots his lightning and then kills himself. That's the scene I want. That's what I want for the rest of on my stranded island. I just want to watch those 4 minutes over and over again.
Yeah, nice.
It's an odd question because like I before reading these books, like I have so much more of an appreciation now for, and I mean George Lucas didn't come up with a lot of these stories, of course, but I just I'm really looking forward to being able to watch the prequels again and be like, oh okay, this is happening at this time right now, and only I will know that because my family have heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise and now Count Dooku the character.
Yeah.
So it's I'm keen, and I think these books do such wonderful justice to said stories.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So back to the book here. The funeral of Dooku's mother is infiltrated by protesters who don't like Dooku's mom very much. And Dooku tries to stop his father from using a army of droids to kill the mob. But they have an argument in front of everybody. And he turns his droids on Dooku. And Dooku raises his lightsaber. He's nearly about to strike down his father, but his sister Jenza stops him. And it becomes very dramatic. And then his father beats him up, and Dooku lets it happen. And because he knows that if he strikes back, he's going to kill the guy. And in the kerfuffle, the coffin gets turned over, and the mother's corpse drops out onto the ground. And his sister Jenza is furious and angry and upset, and sends him away. And he's with Lean at this point, who kind of escorts Dooku to the funeral because this is the last time he's going to see his family. So it ends terribly. And he cuts off communication as instructed by the Jedi and sends one last goodbye message to Jenza. So flash forward a little bit. Dooku and
the guy can't catch a break.
Oh, I know, right? Yeah, totally. So Dooku, Lean, and Sifo-Dias, they leave the planet and they carry on with a mission that Lean was actually going to take, which is why she escorted him to Serenno, because they're supposed to go elsewhere in that system on a private mission that Lean Castana is intending to go on anyways, and Sifo-Dias is with them. So she reveals that the Bogan collection has doubled in size thanks to her and Sifo-Dias. So they've collected a lot of stuff. They've been exposed to a ton of dark artifacts. Dooku has a moment on the mission that leads them to some illegal arms dealers on a planet saturated by the dark side. And he thinks that they waste time meditating on Coruscant, and tells Sifo-Dias that this is what they need to do, is eradicate the evil and villainy from the galaxy. They are then proceeded to be captured by a bunch of sort of evil moss planty stuff. And it turns out to be this ancient people, this like group of people, I guess, called the Presagers, who were obsessed with prophecy. And they are very clearly the emanating source of the dark side on this planet. They sacrificed millions in the past to be rewarded by visions of the future. And it's become part of their culture, and it's a very small culty group. They become part of the ritual, that is Dooku, Lean, and Sifo-Dias. And part of the ritual is this moss, which sort of grants visions, kind of grows on them and sort of absorbs them into whatever. And as this is happening, Dooku has a very strong vision of the future, of the Senate being corrupted, of the Jedi taking control, the war that would spread across the galaxy, the droid army of the Separatists, the Order 66, the clones, the many millions of futures collide in his head, including the knowledge that the Sith are returning to the galaxy. He even has a vision of a bone-white skin, a woman, which is hinted to be Asajj Ventress, which explains why he seeks her out later in life on Ratatak. The Force guides him to her because he has had a vision of this person even before she has been born, essentially. Dooku unknowingly uses lightning to burn the Presagers to a crisp, as well as all the moss, and which is also dampening their Force abilities and causing the visions. Sifo-Dias' torment continued much later after the visit to that planet, and Sifo-Dias is actually the one who foresaw the Clone Wars, and he foresaw a lot of that stuff that Dooku foresaw, but even more strongly. And I thought this part of the story was just kind of unreal. Like, it was super crazy. So like, what did you think of all this? And this story is very saturated around this idea of Sifo-Dias kind of slowly becoming influenced by the coming darkness, by these visions that he's having, and sort of makes it sort of this nightmarish kind of story. But what were your thoughts on that being also like sort of a focus point for this narrative?
That was an excellent part. I think this was towards the later stages of the book, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think I much preferred just the pace and these almost horror, the kind of horror elements I felt with it, especially those sequences with Sifo-Dias and Dooku, and maybe I'm jumping ahead here. I'm not talking about the right scene, but where they're all kidnapped, and those quite dark and intense.
Yeah, that's
dark and intense moments.
Yeah, that's I was just talking about.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah. Like extremely gritty, and I think again, sequences like those would be great to be adapted onto the screen. Not that it would ever happen, just because I think they are a little bit brutal. But it almost felt like Sifo-Dias was being psychologically tortured in a lot of ways, in which he was, and there was just so much pain and suffering that he was going through. You wonder, how he didn't fall to the dark side in the end. And also, it kind of also reminded me of the extents that Anakin would potentially go to when he was fighting for Ahsoka, and actually there's a lot of war crime events that he did throughout the Clone Wars. But yeah, I particularly enjoyed this part of the book the most. I felt it was prior to Dooku falling to the dark side, or at least transitioning. It gave me a good further indication of just tonally how the narrative got a lot darker, which was quite in line with how Dooku also, as a character, was falling closer and closer beyond that. Because at this point, like, he's lost his mother, his sister doesn't talk to him anymore, or at least he's trying to reconnect and save his sister. His father despises him. They lost a lot of really bad things happened at this book, this story up until this point. This is like the penultimate part. Like the homeworld was annihilated by not the homeworld. Sorry, Serenno was fine, but the world that they weren't able to save in the end because of no action being done on Sifo-Dias' premonitions. I'd love to see this adapted in the end on screen, but not like we're gonna really get that. And there's some really dark stuff that these Jedi go through. My goodness.
Yeah, like, it kind of gives you this very clear idea why Dooku falls to the dark side, as well as sort of why Sifo-Dias ends up helping doing what he does. He goes behind the Council's back and creates a clone army. Like, this guy has been tormented by these visions of the rising darkness in the galaxy, and the Council is not willing to do a single thing about it. So he takes matters into his own hands and does what he does, right? And this is all part of Dooku's plan to use that against the Jedi in the end, which is not something that Sifo-Dias really clues into until it's too late. But there's an arc in the Clone Wars where Dooku kind of unveils this to Anakin and Obi-Wan. And I just got a very quick audio clip that I'll play right here.
You have no business left with the Pikes Tyrannus.
Tyrannus? You are the man called Tyrannus?
I told you everything you needed to know on Geonosis all those years ago, Kenobi. You should have joined me. Sifo-Dias understood. He saw the future. That is why he helped me.
You lie. Minister Long, if you're going to help us, now is the time.
Kill Tyrannus!
All right, so it's very short, but it's like he does again confirm to us, like, Sifo-Dias saw the future. Like, that is why he helped me. That's why, and of course he leaves out the whole part about how they're childhood friends as well. But you can see kind of the influence and the foundation of why he does what he does, right? Which is really cool. Kostana teaches them the cleansing ritual of the dark side, which is an ancient method that leaves that the Jedi no longer practice. And she tells Dooku that he is a good man and assures him that the future that they saw will not come to pass. Of course, that's not what happens. Years later, we flash forward years later, and Rael is introduced, which is Dooku's first apprentice. It skips over the entire apprenticeship of that character because Rael is now sort of I guess he's a young guy, but he's like kind of towards the end of his apprenticeship under Dooku. Sifo-Dias' visions are getting even worse. Dooku is in charge of saber training for the initiates these days at the temple, and one of them piques his interest, which is Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn then studies a holocron of prophecies intently underneath the tutelage of Dooku many years later. Qui-Gon, starting to pull that legacy of influence from Lee and Kostana of the prophecy and the coming darkness. Like, it's obviously rubbed off a little bit on Qui-Gon, who is very much a optimistic guy. So he's not as sort of negative about the whole thing, but he does have a very very big fascination with prophecies and things that have yet to come to pass, which plays a big part in that character as a whole. And Dooku has begun to believe that the politicians think of the Jedi as a police force and nothing more, and it angers him very, very much. Ramil, which is Dooku's old brother, meets Dooku again on a social mission that he's on. Not too pleasant of a run-in either. Ramil's a racer in a race, doing speeder racing, and he crashes. And Qui-Gon and Dooku rush to investigate the crash scene. They discover there is likely foul play. They find a gang of Trandoshans, hauling away the wrecked crash speeder. So they chase after them and track them down. And it turns out it was all to ensure, like it was like a rigged bet kind of thing. So it was all like, intentional, and it wasn't supposed to blow up on him because he was supposed to, lose on purpose, but they wanted to make sure that he lost. So he was okay, thankfully, but whatever. Apparently a Jedi on the council was actually under blackmail from one of the gambling schemes that was going on there. He's a council member was like part of that whole thing, which is shocking. Super crazy. So so he contacts Jenza, his sister, letting her know of the situation, but he confronts the council about it and takes the guy, like the one responsible who was communicating and blackmailing a council member to the Jedi Temple, and confronts the council about it. And he outs this person. And it's like this super crazy moment where, it's like, oh man, like all the things that the council's done already to like ignore Sifo-Dias' visions and whatever else. And now all of a sudden one of their council members is like doing bad, controversial, shady stuff. Yeah, because of blackmail.
Why did she do that in the end? I distinctly remember the admission scene, but I don't remember why that happened or why she did that.
Yeah, I can't quite remember exactly the blackmail reason. Oh, that's right. I think so. So she was one of those Jedi or something like that who spent many years away from the Jedi Temple, and on one of these missions she got pregnant and had a kid, and then she brings this child back to the temple as a foundling, essentially, as a Jedi that she's found. And I guess she then becomes this child's Jedi master, even though she's secretly his mother, and trains him to be a Jedi. And then she is sent to the Citadel, which is a Jedi prison. And once they discover this whole thing, but that was like a super crazy like thing. So I think maybe the blackmail had something to do with that, because that was like uncovered in this whole thing. But I thought that was a really crazy big moment for the book, and also one of the reasons, just one of the many other things that's like stacks up with all of the reasons why the council sucks in Dooku's head, right? Like he's like, man, these guys
the council sucks hard.
Yeah.
The council, my goodness, they remind me of my local city council. Like they're awful. Oh my goodness! Like, yeah, I can't believe how many holes this ship has. Like, I feel like, honestly, I feel like Yoda. Like that old term. It's like, oh yeah, when the ship has like a hole in the bottom, you need to like get it to shore as quickly as possible because you want to save the ship. I feel like Yoda's like, okay, the ship's got a hole in the bottom of it, but it's my job to steer the ship in the right direction. It's like, well, hang on a second. The ship's sinking. If you steer in the right direction, it's just still gonna sink. You need to get the people either off the ship or whatever. So yeah, I honestly thought that scene was gonna play out where Dooku like brought in the underworld figure, because this was after the end of the investigation of the racing crash. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I thought that scene was gonna play out and Dooku was gonna be wrong, and there wasn't actually anyone on the Jedi Council that was that blackmailed or betrayed Dooku or did what they did. But yeah, that took me by surprise, I guess.
Yeah, that was.
I guess maybe I still hold the Jedi in a higher light than they are.
Yeah, totally right. Like, yeah, pretty big twist there. We flash back to the present, and Ventress catches up to Jenza's, I guess, kidnapper, and kills the kidnapper, and then begins to question her. And then we flash back again. Rael, Dooku's first Padawan, introduces Senator Palpatine to Dooku after a Senate hearing. Dooku gets a transmission from Serenno, from Jenza, and it turns out his father has died. Count Ramil, which is his brother who was in the speeder crash, is now officially in charge of Serenno, and Serenno has been invaded by pirates. He has also commanded the withdrawal of their status within the Republic unofficially. They've taken their senator back home. They've essentially started to do their own thing. And Dooku, despite all this, wants to help his people because, of course, it's his planet, it's his people, his family's running the show over there. He feels somewhat responsible. And the council refuses to send him to help. But naturally, he goes anyways. And Sifo-Dias and Lean Castana go with him, as well as I think is Qui-Gon with him on that. I think Qui-Gon's also there, maybe.
Yeah, he is.
A large earthquake rattles the earth through the battle that ensues, and Dooku and Lean fall into a crevice in the earth, and they come face to face with Tirataka dragon down in the rocks. This is the dragon that is thought to be long extinct, and the statue that he touched in the big the hall of whatever history, back when his sister was giving him the tour of their planet or their city as a child. He when he touched the thing, he awoken this creature, I guess, with this innate sort of, I guess, this like almost like he's got like a dark mark on him or something. This guy, it's like the beast woke up after he touched the statue of this beast, right? Which is kind of crazy because these beasts were once used as like Sith war monsters. So for him to be this kid, a Jedi, basically a bit of a dark omen to touch the statue and this like beast like wakes up from it was pretty surreal.
This wasn't the same beast as the one that was in the Jedi archives, was it?
No, different thing, but it's
I mean, like a different location, but it wasn't supposed to be the same creature of the
the Zilla beast
of any kind, was it?
No, yeah, you mean like
okay, right, so they're different.
Yeah, it's different.
No, thing. Like the one that when Sifo-Dias and Dooku went down to the Bogan collection. Sorry, I keep thinking.
Oh yes,
but
yes.
Collection,
the holocron vision that he had or whatever. Like when he touched the artifact, it rang out the beast's cry, the Tirantaka dragon that he.
So I thought there was some type of
there was a connection there. Yeah, so it's like there's been this echo of the dark side, like, and his name, his Sith Lord name, Tyrannus, is based on the name of this dragon. I always thought that it was like kind of based on the tyranny.
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Like Tyrannosaurus.
That too.
Yeah, like tyranny, right? Like I don't know. I thought that maybe that's what his name was based on, kind of like Sidious is like Insidious. But no, I guess it's based on this dragon, which is like this old Sith kind of monster creature, home to Serenno. And so, yeah, it was kind of came full circle because all these earthquakes that have been happening ever since he touched that statue have been happening because he awoken that beast beneath the surface of the planet. So, yeah. So Dooku,
and then on Serenno. So after all this happens, and then like Serenno is under the power shift happens, and Count Dooku declares himself as a count. I rolled my eyes big time when like, okay, now the Jedi are going to decide to come and help out. Like, they're going to assist once that they discovered something was under, similar to how Naboo had the plasma, the plasma deposits underneath the earth.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Like, how much worse can these Jedi get? I don't know who to like.
Yeah, I know, right?
In this era, of
like so selfish. Yeah. Yeah. So, but yeah, Dooku kills his brother.
Profits we must.
Dooku kills his brother because he's taking control and doing evil things, and potentially allows the dark side to take hold of him in the chaos of the Fury. He also kills the Tirantaka dragon that he just woke up. And I don't know where that came out of left field, because originally he tries to get Lean to like calm the creature down, and then he ends up just killing it. But whatever. And he claims the title of Count, like you said, in front of Lean Costana and the others. And he calls Yoda from Serenno, and he says a valuable mineral's been found from the battle, basically from the Tirantaka dragon coming out of the ground. And he decides that the Serenians, like the people of the planet, will mine it themselves. He doesn't want the help of the Republic. He doesn't want outside sources. He wants to mine it themselves because he wants to bring money back into the planet and work, because a lot of the mining culture there has kind of died off, and that's what they've been so pissed off about for many years. So he's allowed to keep his lightsaber, and he tells Lean Costana to tell Qui-Gon and Rael, Qui-Gon wasn't there. So he tells Lean Costana to tell Qui-Gon and Rael back home on Coruscant that the Force will be with them. And then it flashes back to the present. Dooku finds Ventress, who has found Jenza, so all these years later. And she tells Dooku that the hooded man is corrupting him. That's Jenza, that is. And that he's lost his way. And Dooku feels betrayed by her, by this, and by their crumbling relationship of siblinghood. He renounces her as his sister, and then has Ventress execute Jenza and has her cover up the evidence. And Jenza dies with
absolutely unbelievable.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
And Jenza dies with all of his secrets. Yeah. So that was kind of crazy.
Man, I feel like this Dooku was not the Dooku we saw in Attack of the Clones. This Dooku was a whole lot darker than what I was expecting. That moment when Ventress was about to execute her, I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
Because I had a gut feeling, but at the start of the book, there's no way I was thinking that. But what I do find interesting connection-wise is that Dooku killed his brother, almost killed his father. I can't remember what happened to his father, but killed his sister, Jenza, in the end, in a brutal way. And he loved his sister. But for example, in Attack of the Clones, he captured and he was very open and clear and almost kind of kind to Obi-Wan and told him everything and was willing to, betray Plagueis. Oh, sorry, not Plagueis. Sidious at that point. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that Obi-Wan was Qui-Gon's apprentice, and he felt that was potentially his last connection with Qui-Gon, who Count Dooku ultimately adored so much.
Yeah, he's always had a bit of a soft spot, a bit of a respect thing going on for Obi-Wan.
He really does. And I think despite his family not treating him very well, the only positive thing, I guess, happened throughout Dooku's life was his friendship with Sifo-Dias, but also how proud he was of Qui-Gon. And there were a lot of moments throughout the story with Qui-Gon, which, by the way, the voice acting for Qui-Gon, fantastic. Not Liam Neeson, but really good.
Yeah, very good.
I found a lot of those moments where Qui-Gon was almost the opposite of what Dooku was. He was the moral justification and saw Dooku's demise, and we saw that clearly in Tales of the Jedi. And I think Dooku had a real respect for Qui-Gon and was proud of him almost like a son that he never had, and treated him more like family. And that flow-on effect, I think, came to Obi-Wan. So I found that so fascinating because, he treated Obi-Wan that way, but brutally murdered his sister and his brother and all the other wonderful things that he did.
Yeah.
Which I find to be even more depressing as a character-wise, because obviously when we read Plagueis, spoilers if you haven't read it yet or listened to the other podcast, but when we read that Sidious killed his entire family in order to move forward, like I wasn't shocked by that. I knew that Palpatine was always a cruel, evil person, and it just made sense. But that part I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
And I almost feel like Dooku has a sense of humanity to himself, which is what made it increasingly more shocking versus Plagueis and Palpatine, who they've got no humanity. They're just evil. Like they're not even humans. I mean, Plagueis is not human, but you couldn't even say Sidious was or Palpatine was human, to be honest.
Right. No, it's true. And the way what you said about them kind of feeling like two different Dookus at times, like it does feel like, he's got his skills as a politician and he's able to be a very respectable guy. But then when he does need to have that evil side of him come out, like when he gets angry or when the Sith Lord inside of him kind of takes over, it really takes over, I guess, very reflective of the name, Tyrannus, like he is, kind of the heart of a dragon sort of thing, of a Sith monster. But then on the outside, he's, a very kind of well-respected, gentle guy. But yeah, it is interesting to kind of see how he is corrupted, how he sort of comes to believe all these things are going to happen and lets that sort of peel him away from the Jedi Order. And in the animated series, which I brought up earlier, this is kind of where it all comes together. There's an overlap, I guess, with three different stories here. One is the Legends book, the Darth Plagueis book, when Plagueis meets Dooku for the first time, and Dooku also befriends Palpatine for the first time. And I think those events sort of overlap pretty well with his time as a Jedi. But in the Plagueis book, he reveals to Palpatine progressively as the story goes on that he has intentions to potentially leave the Order, right? So in this audiobook, kind of where things all of a sudden, it might seem at times that it's very very sudden, that all of a sudden he's like, whoa, what the heck? Like now he wants to claim the title of Count and all this stuff. It's in the other stories which also kind of play into this. So that's the Darth Plagueis book. that kind of gives you the hints there. And then in the animated show Tales of the Jedi, like what you were saying, Kirk, like, you know, that it's almost like the final thing to break him is on the third episode or whatever, like when Qui-Gon dies. Like that's his, at that point, that's sort of the last straw. And at that point, he's already sort of made contact with Palpatine as Sidious and made an agreement with him. And that's where he, you know, kills Yaddle and decides to commit himself as a Sith Lord. So it really all plays up in it. But I think when he kind of leaves the Order, he must have revisited the temple after that, because even though he's left the Order, in the animated show Tales of the Jedi, it almost seems like he's back there at the temple as a Jedi Master, you know, after the passing of Qui-Gon Jinn. So there's some confusion there as to like how does that work timeline wise. But I don't know, like I can maybe see him, you know, being well respected in terms of, you know, being welcomed back as a guest or something like that. But I'm gonna need to watch it again just to kind of see if there's any inconsistencies there. But I don't know. What was your thoughts on how all that kind of stacks up together?
Actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, it doesn't actually make too much sense why he came back, because this book is canon material, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Timing wise, perhaps again, maybe this is where how the book jumps around. It makes it a little bit more confusing to follow. But timing wise, I feel it does make sense. He could have come back just as a noble person, but not necessarily a Jedi Master, because as Yoda said, kept his lightsaber, kept his cape, kept his gentlemanly like and all that. But he was more of a senator to Serenno, or politician to Serenno.
Yeah.
But yeah, now you kind of got me thinking. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah.
It seems like it almost doesn't make perfect sense.
Yeah,
why?
I'm going to need to study the dialogue again on that, but he has a conversation with Yaddle beneath the tree in the courtyard of the Jedi Temple, and he says to Yaddle that he used to take Qui-Gon there as a boy, and I guess it's possible that maybe he's just visiting and decides not to go to the funeral, because I think Yaddle mentions like the Jedi are now departing for Naboo to go to the funeral, and he's choosing not to go, and then she follows him to the warehouse district on the outside the city, right? Hego Damask's old factories, which now are used by Sidious as a bit of a Sith hiding base on Coruscant. And she follows him there, and that's when she confronts him, and that's when he kills her. But I think like the encounter at the Jedi Temple, maybe he just decided to go in for nostalgic purposes. But at that point, he had definitely already left the Order. So there is definitely a place to try and fit this in, but I'm also gonna say this, like Dave Filoni's no stranger to, you know, trying to, you know, very sometimes divert away from canon books and comics, and this might just be one of those times where he probably knew how it happened in this audiobook and then decided not to care about it anyways. But there is still some gray area where we can kind of make both those stories work, and they both are canon still, so it's sometimes very difficult to try and, you know, figure out like what happened when and what's the real definitive kind of story here. But that's the best way I could put it.
Yeah, I almost feel like this book, like it goes up to the point before Dooku. What's told throughout this book is that it jumps that large period of time where what happened to Qui-Gon inevitably occurs. But I'm just watching the Tales of the Jedi scenes here again, but maybe we found a inconsistency here.
Yeah, very possible for sure. But I feel like it lines up pretty well with, you know, because this book is very, this whole story, it flashes through his whole life, like, you know, within just a few hours of story narrative. So there's lots and lots of space there for there to be those interlude moments and those other kind of appearances like in the Darth Plagueis book. And I think it's appearances like that in the Darth Plagueis book that actually still are quite relevant and quite consistent still, at least in my opinion. And if anyone has other opinions, put it in the comments below, and maybe you can kind of help us sort this out timeline wise. But yeah, at least that's just kind of the way I would put it. So very, very cool, seeing the inside scoop of this is a lot of, rich material for kind of this character's downfall. And very very appropriately called Dooku Jedi Lost, as it really highlights a lot of the main pillars why he leaves the Order. And to see that prophecy and foretelling of futures really plays a big role in his downfall. It's always amazed me just the parallels between him and Anakin Skywalker. Like the similarities, even though they're kind of just opposites on the battlefield, and what's the phrase, like arch nemesis, or like it's just they hate each other.
I think
right?
they do, but I think it's also like Dooku and Anakin are almost identical, but one factor, and that's like their economic upbringing. Like Dooku is an extremely wealthy gentleman, classy man who has a family of which some of his family despise of him. But Anakin runs through all the same council problems and issues with the Jedi and the Order and their morals and values that Dooku has. But he comes from slavery and from being homeless almost.
Yeah, poverty. Yeah.
Both of which lose their entire family in the end. I would argue that Anakin kills Padme and Dooku kills his family. And I feel like their background and upbringing is almost why they hate each other, because they I don't know if you would say that they see a lot of the same in each other, because by the time Dooku dies, I don't think Dooku has a good understanding that Anakin feels the Jedi Order has corrupted itself, or maybe he does. I think Obi-Wan has more of an understanding of what Dooku feels about the Order.
Yeah.
But
maybe towards
very good, very interesting parallels.
Yeah, for sure. And like I think maybe towards the end, Anakin maybe can, I guess, relate a little bit. Feel that maybe Dooku wasn't entirely wrong at times, right? Because he ends up becoming that next apprentice of the Sith Lord who trained Darth Tyrannus. So it's there's a lot of interesting similarities there. But how many Pablo points of Poodoos would you give this audiobook?
Well, for our viewers out there, we have a rating system, which is almost like a scale of 1 to 7, where we have 3 Poodoo points, ranging from a 3, 2, and 1, and they're all the negative points, rating up to a Bendu, which means we're in the middle. And then we have our Pablo points, which are our 1, 2, and 3 points, 3 being the most positive and 1 being close to the Bendu. So, did I get that right?
Yep.
I took your job there.
Yeah. You got it.
Yes. In that case, I'm gonna be giving this a 2 Pablo points.
2 Pablo points.
I enjoyed it. There's a couple things. 2 Pablo points. I quite enjoyed this narrative. I think there's a couple of things I would change, which mainly include just structural problems with the story, I feel. And lastly, I think Dooku's voice actor was great, but he just didn't quite sound like the Dooku that I am used to. But apart from those 2 very minor things, I give it a 2 Pablo points, especially for the incredible sound design and stagecraft, I guess you could call it, with this entertainment presentation. This did not read or listen like a book like Plagueis did. Not that Plagueis did it any wrong at all. I think that this is one of the best, well put together production value audiobooks that I've heard in a long time.
Nice, awesome. Yeah, well said. I echo that entirely. Super well done, and I would also give. I also gave 2 Pablo points. I thought there was maybe a few small things I would change and here and there, but overall, really great story. And this one did come before the animated show, so I mean, it is kind of the first canon reasons that he leaves the Jedi Order, other than what was pre-established before. But very cool to see this story holds such a big weight still for the character, and I definitely recommend it to most people. Unfortunately, the other people who were going to join us this week for the review were not able to make it / did not finish the story in time, but hopefully they do. I still think it's definitely one of the a highlight Star Wars book for me, at least within the last 10 years. So we got a What Happened episode coming up with Dooku, and I guess next week or whenever, you and I, Kirk, will just kind of run through the full overview of the character with all the other small appearances here and there, so we can get a broader sense of kind of the timeline of this character. And but there's so much rich material within this story in particular. I'm glad we had the chance to magnify it a little bit. We also have our Star Wars Outlaws review coming up in a few weeks, so hopefully there's been enough time to play through that game, or at least some of it, for a lot of you out there. And eventually we're going to be all spoiler centric, so I'm going to try and find the time to at least finish the main story before that point. But we'll see. It is proving to be a very long game. So I don't know. Maybe I'm doing too many side missions. Who knows? But thank you again, Kirk, for popping on. You've been excellent as always. And we will see you in the next one.
Of course, and in the meantime, if anyone wants to, they can come chomp on some charcoal chicken, which is my favorite cuisine on Corellia. And of course, the Count and I, Kirk, will be there.
Very nice. All right.
That was not my best one, but we got there.
Well, we will see you there for some crispy chicken. All right, and big thank you to our listeners at home. You can follow us on YouTube with the handle at SWEScape Podcast. Follow us on X. You can shoot us an email, swescapepodcast@gmail.com. Share this show with a friend. Leave a comment. Answer the poll if you're using Spotify. Go check out Alki Sabers or East Coast Sticker Company in the description below. We'll see you in the next episode, and may the Force be with you.